Hi, my name is Olanrewaju Esho. I'm a wedding cinematographer. In today's webinar, I'm going to be teaching you and sharing how I set up this camera for my regular shoot. I shoot weddings with it, I shoot documentaries, I've shot concerts with it, I've shot all manner of production with it. So I'm going to be pointing out all the things, all the settings, page by page, and how I also customize my menu system because the camera gives you the option to put all your go-to settings in one place. So I'm going to be showing you that. In addition to, I will be showing you how I customize some of these extra custom buttons on the camera for easy navigation, easy access to features of this camera. So I hope at the end of this, you'll be able to understand a couple of the pointers, and you also be able to integrate some of these tips to your workflow, especially when you use the Sony mirrorless systems. So come along and let's enjoy this. So let us start with the exposure triangle: ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. Usually I set my ISO depending on the situation. So I set my shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. Now, that gives you the best cinematic feel when you're shooting a wedding, because you want to shoot twice the number of your frame rate. So usually you want to leave your shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. Secondly, I dial in my aperture depending on the situation. If I want it wide, if I want everything in focus, I increase my aperture. If I want that depth of field, that shallow depth of field, I open wide my lens completely. And so there's a relationship between your ISO, your aperture, and your shutter speed that you sometimes need to constantly change when you're shooting with these cameras, especially when you want to shoot in manual mode. And I must tell you this, it's fine if you want to shoot in auto mode, but most professionals will always want to have a control of their camera systems. So you always want to shoot in manual mode so that you can control your aperture, your ISO, and your shutter speed. One of the first things I did when I got this camera was to ensure that I have my menu setup. Now, the menu setup can be found on the last page of the menu system of the camera, and that's where you can customize your menu system. So when you go to my menu settings, you see the add item button, and with that you can begin to add the things you usually use every time that you always want to have access to, basically. And for my settings, I have just a few. I have my format because at the beginning of the day, I want to pop in a fresh card and format the card for the day. At this point, I've made sure that I've backed up my last project from that card in probably 2 places. So I'm fine with it. I can format my card quickly just by accessing my menu system and going straight to the format. The second thing I like to set up quickly is my S&Q settings. Now, in the S&Q settings, I have 2 settings for that. If I want to pick up a couple of slow-mo shots in HD, I'll set that at 100 frames per second. But if I want to do a bit of time-lapse shot, just to grab a couple of shots, sometimes I can get to a location where I can see that the clouds is nicely moving and it's all blue and nice and all of that. I quickly switch my frame rate from 100 frames to 1 frames per second, and I just leave my camera to record for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I am good to go. And when I'm recording my time lapse, I ensure that my camera lens is on manual mode so that it can constantly capture the frame that you've set it to. Now, the next thing I said is my proxy recording. Now, usually I shoot in 4K. The world now has accepted 4K, largely, You now have 4K TVs, you have 4K devices all around. But the downside with 4K sometimes is that the systems that we use to edit with, if they're not powerful enough, can be a hindrance. So Sony has made it beautiful that you can have a proxy recording of 720 HD in camera on the same card at the same time. So you can record proxy, 720 HD, and 4K footage at the same time on one card. I mean, that's beautiful. So all I do is I ensure that my proxy recording is on. I also check that my audio record level is good enough to go. And also I select my picture profile. I mean, my picture profile is constantly on PP10. And the beauty of this is because the gamma on the PP10 is HLG2. That's the hybrid log gamma 2. Now, the cool thing with the HLG2 that I like so much is that the dynamic range is good enough. It's wide enough, and it just has just enough colors that sometimes you don't even need to touch anything in post-production. So a lot of times it has just the right amount of color. It's not desaturated, and yet the dynamic range is fantastic. It's not noisy, especially when you're shooting in daytime. It's usually noisy when you're shooting with that same profile at night. So I have another setting I used to shoot when I'm shooting at night, but for daytime or when, you know, the ambience is a bit bright, I shoot with a PP10 profile, which has the HLG2. And the only thing I tweak in that setting is my black levels. So I go to my black levels and I change it from 0 to +5, just to add a bit of contrast to my image. And that's basically how I set up my camera for a wedding shoot. So towards the end of this video, I'm going to show you my workflow on my editing software of how I use the proxy and my 4K footages to ease my workflow. So basically, I edit with my proxy, and at the end of my edit, when I'm done cutting, I'm done grading, it's ready to go, it's ready to be rendered. With a click of a button, I can switch from proxy to 4K, and I can just render my files out. So I'm going to be showing you that towards the end of this video. So another thing I would like to highlight about this camera is the in-body image stabilization. It is fantastic. I mostly shoot just handheld now. I'm pretty much like this throughout the whole day of a shoot. I've added a body grip, a battery grip rather. I can pop in 2 batteries here, and I can pretty much shoot for the whole day. So battery levels is fantastic. There's been a lot of improvements on the battery technology, which was better than the other generations of the Sony A7 series. And the IBs is fantastic. It is, I mean, as long as you're not flipping your camera violently and you can hold still just enough, the image stabilization is really, really good. It's fantastic. Most of my lenses that I use do not even have image stabilization in them. But just because the camera does have image stabilization, I am good to go for the whole day. And if I'm not flipping my camera violently, my pictures, my videos are very, very, very steady. So one of the things that I make sure I do is once I have my camera on, I also check to ensure that my steady shot feature is on in camera, and I'm good to go for the whole day. Now, also to mention, the weight of this camera is a big factor for me. Sometimes on a wedding day, I'm shooting, let's say 8, 10, 12, 16 hours. And in the past, I will log some very big and heavy cameras that at some point will begin to weigh me down, will begin to tire me out. Now, another benefit of the weight and the portability is that I can be in stealth mode. Now, unlike photographers that need to direct you to pose the bride to make sure they are getting their angles right, for me as a videographer, I want to be in stealth mode. I want to be in a mode where I'm not obvious to the bride or to the groom or to the people who came for the wedding. I want to capture genuine reactions. I want to ensure that when they're laughing, I'm capturing the real laughter, not a forced one. When someone is crying, maybe from a speech or for some reason or the other, I want to be in stealth mode to capture those moments. And because of the portability, because of the small size, because of the small nature of this camera, it affords me to do that quite easily. So like a combination feature that goes for me, that works in my favor for this camera, is the weight and the image stabilization. I don't need to put this on a tripod. I don't even need to put it on a monopod. Sometimes I do put it on a tripod just because I want lockdown shots and or probably I'm operating 2 or 3 cameras at the same time. So I'll put them on sticks. But when I'm doing like brides dress up, I'm getting them ready and all of that, I'm in this mode pretty much throughout the whole process. Now, another feature I like about this camera is the ability to be able to customize some of these buttons, the C1, the C2, the C3, the C4, which is also your delete button. You can customize all of these buttons. The joystick and the nipple button here, you can customize all of those buttons to various features. I'll give you an example. This nipple button here on the camera is customized to my Super 35 mode. And that's another feature I like about this camera. Now, this is a 28mm lens. And the cool thing with this camera is that it's a full frame camera, but it is also an APS-C camera, so to speak. It's a crop size camera in the sense that you can shoot in full frame, and with a punch of a button, you can move to Super 35 mode. So your lens can go from 28 to I think about 32 mm thereabout. I really don't know the actual figures now, but the cool thing is it can actually punch in to Super 35 mode. And because a lot of times I like to get a wide and a close shot of the same action. The bride is putting on her lipstick, I can quickly grab a wide and a close, or let's say a mid shot and a close shot. I don't need to physically move in because of the Super 35 mode feature of this camera. And I've mapped that to one of the buttons here. My ISO is mapped already to the right side of the wheel button. My screen exposure is mapped to the right side. For example, when I'm shooting in indoors and I quickly transit from indoors outdoor, I can, with a flip to the left and just activate the brightness of the screen, I can continue shooting and still have the ability to monitor what I'm shooting and monitor my composition, my framing and all of that. So these are the cool things I like about this camera basically. Now, one of the cool things about the autofocus of this camera is that because of the small nature of the screen, you don't have to worry about if your shot is in focus. Once you tap on it and the square appears on it, you know that you're in focus. You are just sure that it's in focus. You don't have to confirm if you're in focus or not. You can be guaranteed it's in focus. All you need to do is tap on it and you're good to go. So now I'm going to take you to my editing software and show you my workflow of how I use my proxy recording and my 4K recording to make my workflow easier. Hi, welcome to my editing station. So in this segment, I would be showing you how I edit my 4K footages with the use of proxies. I edit with Premiere Pro, and I'm just going to show you the whole process. So let's go to the system right now. So I have two sets of clips here. The first clip is my 4K clip, and if we check on that with Control I, it's going to show you 3840 times 2160, which is 4K dimension. Now, okay, so this is the clip. Now, if we check the same clip here, which is in the sub, these are the proxy files that I recorded at the same time on the same card on the Sony A7 III. And if we check the dimension by just clicking on Command I, it's going to show us that the dimension is 1280 times 720, which is a 720 HD. So basically, these are the two files we're working with, C0050, and we have the same set of files here. But the only difference is that at the end of the proxy files, there is S03. Now, in Premiere Pro, you might not be able to link these two files together easily. You can do it, but that means you have to do it one after the other. For you to be able to do it once and for all, you need to rename this set of files. And all you have to do is select these proxy files, right-click, go to rename, and you can type in the find. What we are trying to replace is S03 with underscore proxy, and you rename all of those files. Once you do that, you're good to go with your file. So we're now in Premiere now, and the first thing to do is to import my files. So I go to my desktop where I've saved those files, select open text, and open the 4K files. That's all you need to do. You don't even need to import both files. Just open your 4K files, select all of it, and import into Premiere. Now, while still selected, right-click on the files and go to Proxy and attach proxies. Once you do that, you attach the proxy, you go back to Desktop, Test, and your sub file is your proxy files. So with this, you can select your proxy files, and Premiere will automatically link all of those files together. Now, how do we confirm that this is working? All you need to do is bring the same files, create a sequence, and now I'm just scrubbing through these files just to show you that these are the 4K files. Now, if you go to your sequence up here and check the settings, you see that your frame size is the 4K dimension, which is 3840 by 2160. Now, how do you edit in your proxy? All you need to do is come to this little button, toggle proxies. If you can't find this on your timeline, you can click on this button editor, and it will be somewhere here, and you can add it to it, and you're good to go. Now, once I toggle on it, I'm currently editing in proxy. And how do we know the difference? The best way to know if you're in proxy mode is increase your screen size to about 75% and toggle the proxy button, and you can tell from the skin tone, this is 4K proxy, 4K proxy. So just about when you want to render, you've added your color correction, you've edited, you've balanced your sound, you've added color correction, you've graded your film and everything, and it's time to export. All you just need to is toggle back from proxy to 4K, and you can go ahead and render your footages. And that's it. I hope you've learned something. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Please do not forget to follow us on Sony MEA on Instagram, and also check out the website alphauniverse-mea.com. Thanks for watching, and see you again on the next webinar.